Two sisters, speaking a language only they understood. For nearly 3 decades, they inhabited a world built for two. A private universe so intimate and impenetrable that the outside world simply faded away. By the time their story reached its devastating conclusion, one sister was dead, and the other, after a lifetime of silence, finally began to speak. What unfolded between them is one of the most strange, tragic, and psychologically complex stories ever recorded. This is the haunting case of June and Jennifer Gibbons, the silent twins. Born in 1963 to a Caribbean family living in Wales, June and Jennifer were identical twins growing up in a small, predominantly white town. From their earliest days, they existed as outsiders. In a community that didn't know how to accept them, two girls in a starkly different environment, they learned to turn inward. While other children reached out to the world, the twins reached only for each other, constructing a private reality where they were safe and they were enough. Their retreat birthed a unique creation, a private language, a complex idioglossia built on shared looks, invented words, and intuitive grammar. To linguists, it was a fascinating phenomenon. To psychiatrists, a red flag of profound withdrawal. But to June and Jennifer, it was everything. It was their sanctuary, their secret handshake against the world. But as the years passed, this language would become the bars of their own psychological prison. At school, their silence was a fortress. Teachers noted they would whisper and giggle between themselves in their secret tongue, but would offer only mute, unnerving stares to anyone else. Classmates saw them as eerie, a mirrored unit moving in perfect, silent sync. In a world that punishes difference, their unity was their armor. They dressed identically, moved in unison, and presented a single, unreadable face to a world they refused to engage with. Their connection transcended mere closeness. It was a symbiotic fusion. They didn't just imitate each other, they were each other. A laugh, a thought, a gesture was instantly mirrored and understood. Psychologists would later describe this, not as sisterly love, but as a dangerous enmeshment. It was a relationship that was mutually protective, but also mutually parasitic. Any attempt by one to seek individuality was instantly quashed by the other. Their bond was absolute, and it was suffocating. As teenagers, their insulated world began to rot from the inside out. Their behavior escalated from quiet strangeness to acts of petty crime, shoplifting, vandalism, and then, alarmingly, to arson. These weren't reckless acts of rebellion. They were clinical, coordinated missions. They acted as a single unit, a two-person hive mind executing a script only they could read. To the police, it became clear. You couldn't charge one without the other. They were a single entity. The tipping point came in 1981 when they were arrested for a series of arsons, one of which caused significant damage and terrified their community. This final act forced the British legal system to make a difficult choice. Were these women criminals, to be punished, or patients to be treated? The decision made in that courtroom would irrevocably alter the trajectory of their lives, sending them down a path from which there would be no return. The court deemed them mentally unfit to stand trial. Instead of a prison sentence, they were handed an indefinite order to Broadmoor Hospital, Britain's notorious high-security psychiatric institution. This was not a place of healing. It was a fortress for the criminally insane. For two young women whose crime was silence and fire, Broadmoor was a terrifying descent into a new kind of hell, raising profound questions about race, justice, and the very definition of insanity. Even within the oppressive walls of Broadmoor, the twins' private world persisted. To staff and fellow patients, they remained largely silent and inscrutable. But in private, their intense, closed-off relationship intensified. They were observed, writing obsessively in diaries, performing intricate private rituals, and continuing their silent conversations. Therapists were baffled. How do you treat a disease shared between two people when the treatment requires breaking the very bond that defines them? Those diaries, revealed years later, provided a chilling window into their shared mind. The pages were filled with dark fantasies of control, jealousy, and death. They wrote of pacts and prophecies, debating which one should live and which one should die to free the other. It was a torrent of creative, intelligent, and deeply disturbed thought. Were these literal plans or metaphorical cries for help from a fused psyche? The line was terrifyingly blurry. Experts struggled to label their condition. Was it folie à deux, a shared madness, a severe personality disorder forged in isolation, or an extreme case of identity fusion, where two selves had merged into one dysfunctional whole? Many pointed to the overwhelming social factors: the racism, the alienation, the relentless bullying that made their retreat not just a choice, but a means of survival. No single diagnosis could ever capture the entire truth. After over a decade inside Broadmoor, a shift began. Particularly with June, clinicians saw glimmers of a separate person capable of reintegration. It appeared the twins no longer posed an immediate danger to society. The arduous process of planning for their release began, a prospect that promised freedom but also threatened to dismantle the only world they had ever known. It was during this tense period of transition that the dark themes from their diaries took on a new, ominous weight. Staff reported overhearing conversations that sounded less like fantasy and more like a grim negotiation. A belief that for one to truly live, the other had to die. Whether this was a sincere suicide pact, a symbolic expression of fear, or a desperate narrative they were acting out, remains the central, haunting mystery of their story. Then, on March 9, 1993, as plans for their transfer were finally finalized, the unthinkable happened. During a visit to a facility for their release, Jennifer suddenly collapsed. She was rushed to the hospital, where she died shortly after. She was 29 years old. The initial cause of death was acute myocarditis, a sudden inflammation of the heart. No evidence of poison or foul play was found. Her death was as abrupt as it was inexplicable. What happened next sent a shockwave through everyone who knew their story. June Gibbons, who had spoken to almost no one but her sister for 29 years, began to talk. Not in whispers, but in clear, full sentences. She spoke to doctors, to nurses, to her family. The silence that had defined her existence was shattered in the very moment her other half was gone. It was as if a spell had been broken. In the years that followed, June offered glimpses into their tortured dynamic. She spoke of grief, but also of a profound sense of relief. She described their bond as a trap from which only death could provide an escape. "We were like prisoners. To each other," she said. She insisted Jennifer's death was natural, but her own words, "I am free at last," fueled endless speculation about a willing sacrifice or a subconscious willing of death. The case leaves us with torturous questions. Did the system fail them from the start? Were two isolated girls pathologized for behavior born of trauma and racism? Was Broadmoor, a place designed to contain monstrous criminals, a grotesque overreaction for their crimes? The story is a damning indictment of a system quick to incarcerate but slow to understand the complex human beings in its care. Their story has refused to be forgotten. Investigative journalist Marjorie Wallace's seminal book, The Silent Twins, brought their tragedy to the world. It has since inspired documentaries, plays, and a recent film, each work trying to unravel the mystery of their bond. They have become cultural icons representing the extremes of human connection and the limits of our understanding of the mind. Public reaction has always been split. Some see them as victims of a cruel and biased system, Others view them as dangerously disturbed individuals. Their story forces an uncomfortable conversation about where we draw the line between illness and identity, between criminality and cry for help, and how society treats those who exist on its fringes. To read their diaries is to be deeply unsettled. They reveal two bright, creative, and tormented minds painfully aware of their own captivity. The writing is both a confession and a performance, a testament to the vibrant world they built and the terrifying prison it became. They don't provide easy answers, but they forever complicate the narrative, refusing to let us dismiss June and Jennifer as simply mad or bad. June lived on for decades after her sister's death. She learned to drive, wrote poetry, and gave a handful of interviews, always careful, always guarded. She lived with the ghost of her sister and the weight of their story until her own death in 2022. Jennifer's sudden end remains the dark, unresolved core of their tale, a tragic event that granted one sister a voice and condemned the other to silence, leaving the world to forever wonder what truly happened. So, what are we left with? A story that teaches us that the same bond that can save us can also destroy us, that the systems meant to heal can also inflict deep wounds, that silence can be a prison, a protest, and a sanctuary, all at once. The story of the silent twins doesn't offer comfort or clear answers. It sits at the crossroads of psychology, ethics, and human emotion, forever challenging, forever haunting, and forever unforgettable. If this story has unsettled you, then you've understood it. Some truths are too complex for simple answers. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you believe? Was Jennifer's death a tragic accident, a subconscious surrender, or the final act of a dark pact? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you want to explore more true stories that live in the gray areas between crime and psychology, subscribe to Crime Lattice. I'll see you in the next episode.